Hello everyone. Now I will be dealing with an important topic for your mains, that is the national emergency. This topic is very important for your mains 2017 because this is the 40th anniversary of withdrawal of emergency in 1977. Anniversaries are important in your post-independence. Even if you look at the previous questions, most of the questions are based on anniversaries. Even if you take 2016 question, they asked about linguistic formation of states in India. It was based on the 60th anniversary of state reorganization in India. That is why we took emergency as an important topic for your mains 2017. So here we will focus on what are the reasons behind the emergency, what are the impact of emergency, what are the lessons from the emergency. Internal emergency which was imposed by the Indira Gandhi government. It was imposed from 26th June 1975 to 21st March 1977. That means emergency was in place for 21 months. It was officially issued by the then President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed. Now what are the reasons behind the emergency? One of the reasons we can say the Allahabad High Court verdict. This verdict declared Indira Gandhi election to 1971 is invalid because she has used some malpractices during the election campaign. So the verdict ordered her to resign from the post of MP, that means the post of Prime Minister. Instead of resigning, she has challenged this verdict in Supreme Court, and Supreme Court granted a conditional stay to Indira Gandhi. That means it has allowed her to continue as a member of parliament, at the same time disallowed her to take part of any parliamentary proceeding. This was a basic reason behind the emergency. Another reason we can say the movement led by Jayaprakash Narayanan was a popular leader known as J.P. Lok Nayak. After Allahabad High Court verdict, he called for a total revolution, Sambhurna Kranti, a movement against the misrule of the government. There were corruption allegations against government, prices were rising, government had been not able to address the problem of unemployment. So he called for a total revolution. The main objective of this movement was to removal of the Prime Minister. They conducted demonstration not only in Delhi, every state capital, district headquarters, until Indira Gandhi resigned from the power. He also appealed to the army, the police, the bureaucracy to refuse to obey Indira Gandhi and obeyed the constitution instead. So we can say the movement led by Jayaprakash Narayanan is also one of the reasons behind the emergency. Another one, the emergency regarded as an outcome of a systematic failure as India faces socio-economic political crisis. We know that we had war with Pakistan in 1971. We had to face refugee crisis after 1971 war. We had to face an oil crisis in 1973. We tested nuclear explosion in 1974. All these incidents affected our national economy. Government was not able to address the problem of the poor. There were corruption allegations against the government. Popular movement and agitations led by the Jayaprakash Narayanan. All these socio-economic and political crises which also caused emergency in 1975. That is also another reason behind the emergency. Now we will look at what are the impact of emergency. Impact on constitutional right and the provisions. During the emergency, fundamental right, civil liberties, federal provisions were suspended. It has reduced the power of judiciary. It attempted to reduce the power of Supreme Court and High Court to pronounce upon the constitutional validity of the law. In 1976, an effort made to change the civil libertarian structure of the constitution through 42nd Constitution Amendment Act. What are the changes made by the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act? It has changed the description of India from sovereign democratic republic to sovereign socialist secular democratic republic. And it has changed the word unity of the nation to unity and integrity of the nation in our preamble. Another change is what's made on the legislature. It has changed the life of Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly from 5 years to 6 years. Another one was on executive. It has amended Article 74. The President shall act in accordance with the Council of Ministers in discharge of his duty. Another one was on judiciary. It reduced the power of judiciary. For that, it has inserted Article 32A that to deny the Supreme Court power to consider the constitutional validity of the law. So that was provided through under Article 131A. A major change made by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act is that it has made some changes to the fundamental right and the DPSP. It has given the primacy of all directive principles of a fundamental right contained in Article 14, Article 19 and Article 31. It also included few more directive principles like free legal aid, participation of workers in management of industries, protection of environment, protection of forest and wildlife of the country. It also changed the fundamental duties of the constitutions. It has inserted Article 51A to create a new part for the constitution, that is Part 4A, It has prescribed the fundamental duties of a citizen. Another change was made on the emergency provisions in the constitutions. Under Article 352, the President could declare emergency throughout the country and not in a part of the country alone. But this act authorized the President can proclaim emergency in any part of the country. These are the changes made by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Now we will look at what are the other impact of emergency. Impact on media. They are the fourth estate of a democracy. They suffered a lot during the emergency. Severe censorship was imposed on the newspaper, the radio and the television. Nobody had a guts to defy the censorship order except Indian Express. The first edition of Indian Express after the imposition of emergency was consist of a blank page instead of an editorial. Indira Gandhi invoked Article 352 of the Constitution that has given an extraordinary power for Indira Gandhi. She has used this power to influence the police force to detain the protests and agitations against the government. Hundreds of the leaders were arrested during the emergency, including Jayaprakash Narayanan, Morarji Desai, Atal Bihari Vajpayee and so on. Several academicians, journalists, trade unionists, student leaders were also put behind the bar. Arrests continued throughout the period of the emergency and some of them were released after few days and after few months. So this is also another impact of emergency. Then the election. Election to the state and the parliament were postponed because of the emergency. One of the another impact of emergency becomes the sterilization program. The emergency gave immense power not only in the hands of Indira Gandhi but her son Sanjay Gandhi. He ordered a sterilization program, that was a family planning program to curb growing population in the country. The process supposed to be voluntary, but there were reports where unmarried, old, in some cases opponents were forced to get sterilized. So this is also another impact of emergency. During the emergency, the parliament was made utterly ineffective. The state government were rigidly controlled. Two non-Congress government, DMK in Tamil Nadu, the Janata government in Gujarat were dismissed. The Congress party was also strictly controlled during the emergency. This emergency concentrated unlimited state and party power in the hands of Prime Minister to be exercised with some politicians and the bureaucrats around her. This was the impact of emergency in 1975. Now we will look at what happened after the emergency. So after the withdrawal of emergency in 1977, general elections were declared in the country. Congress was defeated by the Janata Party. Indira Gandhi and her son Sanjay Gandhi lost their seat. Morarji Desai became the Prime Minister of the country. It was the first non-Congress government assumed the leadership of the country. This began the darkest period in Indira Gandhi's political career. The new government, that is the Janata government, constituted a Shah commission to probe the excess committed during the emergency. It recorded high-handedness, arbitrary action had been carried out with impunity during the emergency. So the Janata government ordered to arrest Indira Gandhi on many charges. That strategy actually failed. That has benefited Indira Gandhi. She has got that much sympathy from the people who considered she as an autocrat just 2 years before. The Janata government became ineffective because the main focus of Janata government was to remove the power of Indira Gandhi. They failed to address the problems of the poor. There were internal conflict within the Janata party. So they lost their power in 1979 and we know that in 1981 election, Congress returned to the power and Indira Gandhi returned as a Prime Minister. After the emergency, some of the changes was made to the constitution through 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978. It was enacted by the Janata government. The main objectives of this amendment to nullify some of the amendment made by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, like constitutional protection to publication in newspaper, in proceeding of the legislature and the proceeding of the parliament. Another one was the president may only once send advice of the cabinet for reconsideration. Then the restoration of some of the powers of the Supreme Court, which denied in the 42nd Amendment. Then fundamental rights, including Article 20 and 21, cannot be suspended during the national emergency. Then the right to property was deleted as a fundamental right. Now it is only a legal right under the Constitution. These are the changes made by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978. Now what are the lessons from the emergency? The emergency has brought both the weakness and strength of our democracy. So there are observers who think that India ceased to be democratic during the emergency. It is not worthy. The democratic function received within a short span of time. That means emergency is very difficult to do away with the democracy. Indians have a persistent faith in democracy. That is not just because of the constitutions, because the democracy is truly in our blood. It is the plurality and heterogeneity of the Indian society that made people to revolt against authoritarian rule. Indian strength has always been the vibrant democracy. Our perhaps is only the country people contrastingly different caste, creed, race, religions live together with peace and harmony. So one of the lessons from the emergency, we know that as long as the composite nature of Indian society survive, Indian democracy will survive. The second and the most important lesson from the emergency is that it has rectified the emergency provisions in the constitutions. The new provisions made it difficult to declare emergency. Now the emergency can only declare if there is an armed rebellion. The third lesson is that it has created awareness about the values of civil liberties. Before emergency, people are not aware about the importance of civil liberties. When there was an absence of civil liberties during the emergency, they realized the values of civil liberties. Even the court, they realized the inefficiency of the judiciary to protect the civil liberties during the emergency. Now the Supreme Court and the High Court, all the judicial system are very active in protecting civil liberties in India. There were many civil liberties organizations emerged after the emergency. Then the fourth lesson is that administration of police became more vulnerable to the state influence. The actual implementation of emergency rule take place through police and administrations. These institutions could not function independently. They turned to political instrument of the ruling party according to Shah Commission report. That means they are vulnerable to the political pressures or the state influence. This problem did not vanish even after the emergency. These are the lessons from the emergency. Now we can say the emergency in 1975 was the biggest blow in the democracy. But it has also brought certain flaws in our constitution to the forefront. The reformed democracy further endorses civil rights with more inclusion. Reforms following the emergency are still relevant and even to the future course of our democracy. These are the important points you should revise before you go into write the mains. So the reasons behind the emergency, the impact of emergency, the lessons of the emergency. So please go through your material and all the best for your mains. Thank you.